welcome back to the farm. Today is about assembling beehive parts or hardware for expansion, and in my case, since I have hive number 1 is going to be producing honey, so I need to worry about supering the hive. I have a second hive coming, so I have to get that set up. I may have to get a third hive depending on how the population of the first hive is. So I've had to collect some parts to get ready. As you can see right here, I got a bottom board, another slotted rack, as I call it, a lid for the hive. I got my hive boxes there. You see I have to paint. I got my frames. So I'm pretty much ready to go, except for I still got to do some more assembly. I still got to do some painting. Now first, I want to talk about the bottom board. There's 3 types. You have a solid type, you have a screen type. Well, excuse me, 2. But you have 2 different screen options you can choose from. The first one is a pure solid board. Now if you're down south and you have a lot of issues with hive beetles and wax moths, I don't recommend having a solid bottom board unless you just love them. You still have to go out and clean the bottom of the hive out to get rid of all that junk, because they will get if they have a way to reproduce at the bottom of the hive, they will. I'm talking about the best. So reason why they made screen, and you can see them right there. Now this is the oil pan. It's designed to hold oil. You can put the macros earth in there, whatever you really want, and this will help collect and drown the beetles, the veronomites. Trying to think of my next thing. Hive stand. If you want a hive stand, that's this raises, that gives them a little more surface area to work with. As far as a landing pad, that's completely optional. I do recommend having an actual hive stand off the ground, because you have skunks, raccoons, bears. So that would be something to look into, especially if you're my height, like I'm 6 foot, 6'1". So having it off the ground is easier for me to lift, because I don't have to lift as high. I don't have to work as hard. I call this a slotted rack. It's not the official name. This acts as a roosting spot for the bees. It would increase insulation. It would help keep the hive warmer in the winter, cooler in the summer. So I find these useful. A lot of beekeepers I know don't use these. Completely optional. The boxes, I've talked about the boxes. You have for deep, medium, shallow. But you do have to stay with the same number of frames per box. So if you get an 8, you can't upgrade to a 10 and just slip an 8 on. It's not going to work. The size of the box doesn't matter, but you do have to have the frames match the box. So if you have a deep that you put any solid frames in, it's not going to work. If you're wondering how big a deep is, these are deeps. Just give you a comparison of scale. If you're wondering why those have wires, those are the wax embedded, which I've been told the bees love and draw quite quickly, so I'm experimenting. A couple disclaimers with this. Put the eyelets in prior to assembling the frames. Also, when you use the wax foundation, it's very dense, so when it gets cold, it's just really brittle, excuse me, and it breaks very easy. So it's not preferred for most of the major beekeepers. For me, I'm not going to make that big of a deal, because bees will repair it. It's not that big of a deal to me. Assembly. If you're mass assembling some frames, I recommend having a frame jig, which is that box way over there. That allows me to do 10 frames very quickly. I would also recommend a wiring jig if you're using the wax foundation. This allows me to have the wire nice and taut or straight, so I get a nice break and when I embedded the wire to the wax. Lastly, you would need some type of electrical embedder. This is what this is. Comes in all shapes and sizes depending on your price point. You can actually buy a tool that looks like a little wheel, has a spur wheel on it. You do need to heat that up though. So you could also use the plastic frames if you want to have a little more simpler time. Do be mindful, the wax may not be as strong, so you may pull out a frame and it looks wonky. Just smush that back into the foundation. The bees will take care of the rest. Number one expense is going to be frames, because you do have to replace these every 5 years, because what happens is they will lay an egg in that cell, the larvae and Marses, and that cell gets a little smaller than what it was in first go. So after 5 years, that cell becomes a health issue for the bees. So what we do is switch out the frames. Easiest way I can say is just put a knots on here, or an X or whatever that you can identify. So this is why you see me running multiple styles, because I know what years I have. What else is there? Assembly. I find assembly to be easier of the two things, especially when it's a little cheaper price point. But again, I have tools. If you don't have tools, I would not worry about buying unassembled equipment. Now, if you have a lot of beehives, yeah, unassembled is going to be the way to do, because you're trying to save money. Painting. This is very important right here. No acrylic paint. Has to be exterior oil-based paint. And when you paint, you usually just paint the sides. You don't have to worry about the tops, because you're painting the sides or the parts of the wood that's going to be exposed to the elements. The inside's not going to be exposed. So I'll put this back on. What I recommend is going to your Depot, Lowe's, your local paint store that sells mismatched colors for cheap. Like like Home Depot, you can buy a gallon of Oops paint for what is it, 10 bucks compared to like 40. The color is not going to make that big of a deal. White is preferred, but it doesn't have to be white. I know people that make pieces of art out of the beehives, but after a while you're not going to care what it looks like, because you just, oh, I need a box and flop it on. Preferably no dark colors unless you're up north, like way north. In my neck of the woods, I would stay away from dark colors. I would use more lighter. Like, I just picked up some yellow paint. It may look weird to me, but hey, it was cheap and decent paint. And yellow will reflect sunlight. Just let me do some more assembly of the frames. Oh yes, I forgot. Mountain Sweet Honey. On Mondays, I'm going to have a flash sale of their frames, unassembled, deep or medium, for 99 cents a unit. So if you're needing some frames, that's a good buy. And this has been Tulsa Urban Farmer, and I will catch you in the next video. As always, feel free to like, sub, or comment, and I will catch you in the next video.